They tell you that kindness is a weakness, that being the bigger person only leaves you bruised. They tell you that when life breaks your back, literally or figuratively, you're supposed to stay down. And when people closest to you hurt you, they expect you to harden, to close off, to become someone unrecognizable. But today we're talking to a man who refuses to let the world change his heart. A man who walked through disappointment, loss, and reinvention, and still chose to see the good in others. A man who carried the weight of family, the pressure of expectation, and the sting of betrayal. Yet moving with humility, humor, and a smile that hides more stories than most people will ever know. He didn't just survive the flame. He learned how to stand in it without losing himself. On this episode of Surviving the Flame, we sit down with a gentle giant, a leader by nature, a man of perseverance, and someone who proves that strength isn't measured by the battles you win, but by the character you keep when everything falls apart. From Florida to Hawaii to Texas, from heartbreak to healing, from dreams deferred to a future rebuilt. This is the story of Scott Sutton, or as I like to call him, Scotty Too Hotty. I'm your host, Tavion Mickens, and if you're someone who's ever had to rebuild, reimagine, or rise again, hit that like button and subscribe. Now take a look at these highlights from today's conversation.
Going through hard times, going through hard things in life, doing hard stuff is a great way for you to grow and learn. You learn your tolerances, you learn your abilities, you learn what you can and can't do. And you can either learn how to circumvent what you can't do, or you learn a new way to improve on how to do it better.
If you have committed yourself to just this route and you haven't committed yourself to the idea of, I know what I can do. I know what my value is. I know, this, that, and the other. If you just commit yourself to just the destination and not just a mentality of, by any means necessary, then when you hit those roadblocks, when you hit those levels of adversity, it's going to be very hard to pivot. It's going to be very hard to turn. It's going to be very hard to just get back up and keep going.
There and go, okay, why did they do this? Why do I feel this way? What was I looking for that they weren't looking for that caused this disconnect or this problem?
Yeah.
Was I looking for love and they're looking for one night? Was it, I was looking for someone that I could be friends with forever and they were just looking for someone that they could use for money? Like, what's going on there? Figure that out and understand not everyone's out to get you still. Just because one was bad doesn't mean that the world's bad.
All right, family, welcome back to another episode of Surviving the Flame. If you enjoyed that preview, go ahead and hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts so we can keep this flame burning together. Now, let's get into today's conversation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Surviving the Flame, where we have lit conversations with ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Today's guest is truly no different than that, man. I'm your host, Tavion Mickens, and today I have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing a man that I am truly proud to call a brother. He's a man, known by me and many others as a jolly giant. He's, not just for his height, but, for the massive heart that he carries for everyone around him. He's a man of incredible perseverance who has faced the heartbreak of lost dreams, someone who has had to carry the weight of caring for family members in their final hours, and someone who has, felt the sting of betrayal from those closest to him. And yet, through it all, he remains a beacon of positivity, a leader who sets the standard for what it means to move with peace. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages and stages, and even the ones making minimum wages, I am most pleased to welcome the man, the myth, the legend, and honestly, my true good friend, Scott or as I like to call him, Scotty Too Hotty, Sutton. Brother man, how are you feeling today, brother? How's it going?
You know, it's a fantastic day. I'm still breathing, birds still chirping, sun rose today, sun setting today. You can't hate it.
Hey, that's how you do it, brother. First and foremost, I want to go ahead and get this out there. Let's first put your city on the map, man. Where are you from?
See, that's the little question. Cause we want to talk about where I was born. I was born in Albany, Georgia.
Okay, okay.
Logistics base, Albany, Georgia.
Got it, got it,
God
got it.
bless Uncle Sam's misguided children and their tiny little bases all over the United States, brother.
That's
If we
what's
want
up,
to talk
man.
about where I spent the most amount of my life is
Hmm.
obviously Tallahassee. That's where we met. I was there off and on, partially thanks to my dad's career in the Marine Corps. So I popped around here, there, and everywhere. The second closest place that I could call home would be Honolulu, Hawaii, actually.
Gotcha,
You
gotcha.
know,
Wow.
the whitest howler you'll ever know. Unfortunately, I don't tan that well, so it is what it is.
Nah, I got you, brother. I got you. We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna get started. Started with just who you are as a person, man. When people hear the name Scott, people call you. A lot of people know you as the Jolly Green Giant. You know what I'm saying? But while that nickname does fit physically, due to your height, of course, you've said that you try to see the best in people, even when they hurt you. You know, where does that capacity for grace come from?
First of all, being 6'4" has its advantages. Being 6'4" also has its disadvantages, such as any door that's not meant for a tall guy. So we'll get that out of the way. Second part to that question, in all honesty, a lot of it comes from early development, right? So as a young man, small child, I, for some reason, had this ridiculous amount of anger in my heart, and I had such an easy temper, and I had such a dour look on the world, and it was really probably past middle school that I kind of I got off the medications that so to take a step back on that portion. As a young age, our generation, they just thought, "Hey, medication will solve everything," right?
Yeah.
So they diagnosed me with ADHD and all this other good stuff when I never had it. I was just a rambunctious kid who didn't wanna pay attention. That was an issue. So they gave me some meds. The meds started causing problems, so they put me on antidepressants, and what happened was they made this horrible little concoction in my body, which just I had no impulse control. I was always angry. I always felt like something was going wrong. Someone was out to get me. Something was happening, and so I was always angry for no reason. When I finally got off those meds and you can kinda just look at life, it's like, "Why am I angry? Why
Mhm.
why why would I need to have this rage towards everyone else? So why not just have a smile with it?" And what
Yeah.
comes along with that is when you got a smile about it and you just wanna make the world a little bit better and make everyone smile and happy, you kinda just get out of the feeling of everything or everything's bad, my bad.
All
Uh,
good, bro.
everything's dour, everything's mean, and so you always wanna see the best in everyone, and you always wanna put that forward, especially later in life when you're always like, "I wanna see the best in you, I wanna see you grow, I wanna see you as I think you are, so you can
Mhm.
be your best self, just like I wanna be my best self." I don't always achieve it, no one does, but you always wanna see them be the best that they can be. That's how I feel.
No, I feel that. I feel that, and as you talk about, wanting to see the best in other people, I feel like that's something that you've always, had on the inside, and I feel like that's what makes you a natural leader, who constantly sets higher standards, you know what I'm saying? But do you feel that being a leader is something that you're born with, or is it, a discipline that you have to choose every morning? I mean, because you have been around military leaders just about your entire life, you know what I'm saying? So I guess it's easy for someone like yourself to say that, it's something that you're born with. But I also know at the same time that you have a strong respect for those who serve and who choose to serve the right way. You know what I'm saying? So how do you feel about being a natural leader? Do you feel like it's something that you're born with certain qualities of, or it's just a discipline that you learn as you grow in life?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
See, here's how I view it. Everyone has the potential for leadership. It doesn't have to be like case in point, we'll get to it later. It doesn't have to be like when I was in charge of a platoon. It doesn't have
Hmm.
to be when I was in charge of a company. Okay. Not everyone has that ability to be such a grand leader and hold on to 40 to 150 to 200 kids, right? Not everyone's got that capacity, but they do have the ability to be a leader of 3, 4, 5 people that are right there next to them. Yeah, probably, I know I've worked minimum wage jobs before. You probably worked minimum wage job before. You got that shift manager who's sitting there if they can't do jack, but they're there for you and the 3 other people that they're in charge of.
Right, right, yeah.
Everyone has that ability, and everyone can learn that discipline of how to lead. Lead, follow, get out the way. However,
Mm, yeah.
however, there are some people who are a little bit more natural with it. They understand people a little bit more. They understand how to get things done. They understand that there's not always one path forward, right? I ain't got to smack my head into a concrete wall until I can get through that wall. I can go over, around it, under it, freaking say someone, hey, back into this sucker and we'll go through it. It's great.
Yeah.
There's other ways to do it. And everyone does have some of that ability. And that's just down to personality and how you were raised. You touch on
Mm,
the good point. Growing up, I was near a whole bunch of colonels, majors, lieutenants, captains, sergeants,
yeah.
gunnies, first sergeants. I was, I was Captain Sutton's, little kid. And so they
Mhm.
thought it was a great idea to, run me around and do stuff. I spent more times with the gunnies and first sergeants than I did with the officers at first. And then you run into a two-star general and he's sitting there talking to you like you're a baby. You're sitting like, this is great. I love this
Yeah.
cool guy. And then later on you go, oh, that was a 4-star that I knew. Okay, no thank you.
Yeah.
There was worse. Um, this will probably we'll talk about it later when I was a midshipman and an officer candidate. But on base, I bumped into the base CG. I bumped into
Mm.
star and I was a midshipman.
Oh,
And you
wow.
just have that, "Whoo, you got way too many stars on your chest.
Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah.
no, we're not doing that."
Right, right,
Uh,
right.
Stuff like that, like, you grow up around them, and they
Mhm.
impart their wisdom on you ever since you're little, and it's one
Right.
of those of you do get that benefit, and you do have that little bit of added on to, "Okay, now I can understand how to manage people a little bit more." But at the end of the day, leadership is a trained value, and it is a taught value. You may be naturally good at dealing with people, but knowing how to manage them and direct them, that's a different skill.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. And you talk about your journey, uh, as a midshipman and your journey through the military and, coming up as a child and everything like that, but before we go too deep into that realm, you told me you wanted to come on this show because you believed in the vision of surviving the flame. But what does the phrase mean to you, a guy like yourself who has you know, seen his fair share of fires himself? You know what I'm saying? Like, what does the term or the phrase surviving the flame mean to you when you think of life itself and everything that you've had to go through?
You know, you always hear all those adages of steel sharpens steel, we make each other better. The forge of fires forges, the best metal or, makes soldiers or makes marines, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
You hear all those euphemisms and you hear all those mantras. And, as a kid or when you're in training, you're thinking like, "Oh, that's dumb. There's no way that that's gonna matter." But it's a reality. It truly is. Going through hard times, going through hard things in life, doing hard stuff is a great way for you to grow and learn. You learn your tolerances, you learn your abilities, you learn what you can and can't do. And you can either learn how to circumvent what you can't do, or you learn a new way to improve on how to do it better.
Absolutely.
And surviving the flame, as your podcast says, it's one of those of everyone can survive. Everyone can learn. It's how you learn from each event or each, traumatic experience or each troubling thing, each bit of training, each bit of, learning how to do taxes. is a
Hey,
fire in
man.
itself. Learning how to take care of your own household, getting married, having a family, that
Yeah.
still counts. It doesn't have to be big things of where you're worried about rounds wasn't by your head. It could just
Right.
be something as simple as, how do I be an adult on my own? How do I survive when I have no one to walk me through it? And each and every one of those experiences is important and should be valued because it takes care of you and lets you grow as a person. And that's the most important part of this little experience we called life, which is growth.
Yep. So true. And as we talk about, this experience called life and everything like that, I remember growing up and having a plan for everything. And like you said, like, you find out about things as you go, but like a lot of the times, before you actually like start it, before you actually buy that house, before you get into that serious relationship, before you start that new job, you have an idea of how you're going to move through it. You have an
Mhm.
idea of how exactly are you going to be successful and everything like that. But I want to talk about when plans burn down, when you're forced to make that pivot, something that not a lot of people are able to do. You know what I'm saying? And you have your heart set on there was once upon a time where you had your heart set on being a United States Marine and a machine gunner, then as an officer, but due to certain injuries and things like that, that changed everything. How do you retain your mind to stop forcing the door to open and start looking for a new path? Like how let let's talk about like that journey in to the thought process, to the pivot, to now your mindset of having peace. I'm saying? Like, how exactly did that go for you?
Well, like you touched on it, right? I grew up in the military, with the military, around service members,
Right.
running around like a knucklehead, getting to play with hardware I probably shouldn't have been holding on to, right? So that's all I wanted. It's like, when we talked before this, it was I wanted to be an 0331 light medium machine gunner. I wanted to be the big knucklehead with the big gun who's a big target. But guess what? I got more firepower. I can run around and do what I want.
Yeah.
Funny enough, the only reason I gave up on that dream of enlisting and just going straight into the Marine Corps out of high school was because I lost a bet. I lost a bet to my old man. And the bet was that I would get accepted to a 4-year university before the end of our high school season. Now, as you remember, as you were a year younger than me,
Hmm.
this was at the tail end of senior year.
Yep. It
I
sure
thought
was.
I had it in the bag. I was
Yeah.
like, dog, I already got my contract. I'm gonna get my set date. This is gonna be great. I'm gonna go off. It's gonna be a whole thing. 1 month later, FAMU called. FAMU said, congratulations, we've accepted your application. And you sit there and go,
Yeah.
do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And of course, my old man hopped on there and said, I happened to notice that they had a NROTC midshipman program. Why don't you go try and be an officer like me? And I said,
Yeah.
well, you know what? Thanks. I'll go do that.
Yeah.
And so I got to do that for 2.5 years, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I
Mhm.
enjoyed leadership. I enjoyed being able to lead. Now, all that set up towards the tragedy, right? Every story
Yeah.
has its rise, every story has its fall.
Right.
Unfortunately, I couldn't get the 4-year scholarship because I could
Mm.
only do 8 pull-ups. So I was getting a first class PFT and CFT, but I wasn't competitive across the national board. So I
Oh,
just left the
wow.
program. Immediately after, literally a month after, I am now pivoting to, well, the Marine Corps gave me a fantastic body and work ethic, so let's start working out some more and maybe do this bodybuilding. And once I graduate, I'll go straight to the service.
Mhm.
There were little problems already popping up in my back and already in my body, and I didn't notice it. Cut to I'm deciding to lift weights and I'm doing some squats and some heavy weights on my back. And you ever been in a car where you felt a bolt share in the
Mm.
frame of a vehicle and you hear that chunk and it makes a
Yeah,
big old
yeah.
noise? I felt that in my lower back. Yeah. Pushed through the
Hmm.
pain, rocked the weights on there, couldn't walk for almost a month.
Dang.
Yep.
Yikes, man.
And in that, that was right before COVID, and I mean a couple months right before COVID.
Oh
So
man.
we go through that. I ship out to Hawaii to help take care of my old man going through his cancer treatments. And I talked to the Ozo in Hawaii, and they said, "Well, you said you had an injury, so why don't you go on up ahead to Tripler and get it checked?" We got it checked. Something was wrong with my back. They couldn't figure out what. It wasn't until I moved out here after I graduated that I got it checked. Bulged disc, degenerated disc, damage to the lower vertebra, damage to some of the other vertebra, and
Mm.
uh, some of the other parts of my spinal column. Automatic disqualification from service.
Oh man.
Any one of those was a DQ. All three of them plus extra, complete
Yeah.
DQ. That
Dang, bro.
news crushed me. And I mean, I was like, there's no other word for it. I was depressed.
Yeah.
I felt horrendous because my thought was at the time I was 25. I'll just
Mhm.
pop right back out and I'll
Yeah,
just go out
prime of
through the
life,
door.
man.
It'll be great. What could go wrong? I'll just go back right to it. Having that knowledge of it has been completely shut for me. That those were dark nights. Those were dark days. Those were dark weeks. But like we're taught, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. You need to get off your butt. You need to
Right.
move forward. You need to figure out what we're gonna do next. Luckily, I was talking to my then girlfriend, my now fiance, and she told me, "Well, why don't you go see a chiropractor? Why don't you start PTing it so that you're not in pain all the time?" And I said, "All right, that's fair enough." So I start doing that. So I start thinking of what's going to happen next. How do I pull out of this spiral? How do I pull out of this negativity of what I've only wanted for my entire life?
Right.
And then it gets shifted towards, okay, if I can't be a Marine, I want to help the Marine Corps. So I looked at trying to go into the contractors that are here, try to work with some of the defense agencies. They say, hey, you
Mhm.
don't have enough experience, can't do that. I'm like, okay, you know what that means? I need to go out and get regular work experience. So I
Yeah.
start going to get regular work experience. I find jobs, don't find a whole lot of jobs. I find door to door salesman jobs, which are commission only, which are some of the worst jobs you'll ever have. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
knocking on Section 8 housing in the middle of nowhere, Texas, where half the time you can see they've got something loaded behind the door. Yeah, it didn't last too
Yeah.
long there. Doing some other things that, while weren't illegal, felt illegal to me. Um, wasn't fun. Moving on from that one and trying to figure out, okay, what's the plan ahead? What do I have ahead for me? So luckily I found an office job. I started working. It's not the best pay, but here I am. I've got a job. I've got a
Yeah.
plan. I'm moving forwards and shifting my goalpost. It's no longer join the Marine Corps, stay until I get some stars on my chest. It'll be great. To, okay, I can't serve. How can I serve others? How can I serve myself? And that's kind of just how I've shifted. It's one of those of I can't serve my country, but I can help others. I can
Yeah.
help friends, family, locals. I can do what I can for others that I couldn't do as I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you have to do it. When you feel like your dreams are crushed and they may be
Mhm.
crushed and they may be gone, figure out how to adjust that passion. Figure out how to move and keep on living because it doesn't just stop.
Yeah.
Bills don't
Very
go
true.
away. Food doesn't end up not in the fridge, you know? Life keeps moving.
Life keeps moving, brother.
You just
Oh
gotta
man,
keep going.
that's so true, man. And I think that that's something that we should definitely like, you know, give you your flowers for because a lot of it's very hard. It's very hard to accept the no. You know what I'm saying? It's very hard to have your goal set on something that you've wanted your entire life. And, life just has a way of pulling it right up under you and just say, not this time. Not right now. You know what I'm saying? And then it's so easy to just kind of crumble and just be like, you know what, man? Well, if I can't do this, then what can I do? And it's very, 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 very important that's why, like, the worth within yourself and you don't attach yourself to a dream or attach yourself to a job or to a like an idea,
Mhm.
because I feel like when that starts to happen, then you lose sense of yourself because life doesn't owe you anything. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? So what happens when life says no? What happens when, you're planning on doing this thing and then out of nowhere, like you've planned and you've done, and like if you only know that, how do you pivot? How do you say, okay, I can't do this, but I can still do that? You know what I'm saying? With me wanting the dream and idea of becoming an actor, it's like, okay, I'm not in the space, nor do I have the experience right now to be on the billboards, to be on, Peacock and Hulu and Disney Plus and everything. I like, or like the number one box office.
Mm.
Not
Yeah.
yet, at least, but it's like, okay, if I can't get there right now, what does life provide me to
Mhm.
say I can at least do this? You
Yep.
know what I'm saying? And I feel as though by I feel as though when you change your mind frame, or when you change, the way that you look at a situation, like perspective is everything. You know what I'm saying? So if you can be able to look at an adversity and see an opportunity, you're already ahead of 80% of the people who are also, going for this same thing or going for a similar goal. You're already 80% ahead of them, because it's like, I believe 80% of chasing your dreams is always going to be your mindset.
Mhm.
How are you looking at your situation? Because anything can happen on a dime, bro. Like you can be headed for greatness, and then something can happen. You can be so close, and then life can be like, let's take this detour right here. Then it's like, okay, well, if you have committed yourself to just this route and you haven't committed yourself to the idea of, you know, I know what I can do. I know what my value is. I know, this, that, and the other. If you just commit yourself to just the destination and not just a mentality of, by any means necessary, then when you hit those roadblocks, when you hit those levels of adversity, it's going to be very hard to pivot. It's going to be very hard to turn. It's going to be very hard to just get back up and keep going. And actually, I want to harp on, speaking of getting back up and keep going, and the strength that you have, brother. I mean, like, you have witnessed and gone through some very hard things, you know what I'm saying? And speaking of pivots and having the strength and the mindset to keep going, you you moved, you talked about moving to Hawaii, to take care of your dad and everything like that, once he during his battle with cancer. How did that season of your life change your perspective on what strength really looks like for you?
It's hard, right? In my mind, my father was always this mystical being, right? Endless energy, endless knowledge, endless abilities, endless strength. The man was a machine at times. And it's hard to ever think of him as weak, especially when he's fighting cancer,
Yeah.
right? When you're sick, you think of this person who all your life has been what you wanted to achieve, and then watching him be brought low by this nasty, nasty little monster of a bug.
Yeah.
It's hard because now it wasn't my father was taking care of me and raising me. It was now I was helping take care of him. And in a sense, not raising him, but more maintaining him throughout his, unfortunately, to the end of his life. And, the transition over, we were hopeful because we were called and told that the cancer that they checked was called singular myeloma, which is a treatable disease. It's a treatable cancer. It's a it's a bone cancer, and you nuke the little buggy enough times, and eventually it dies, and you have it to remission. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
We're going, that's great. We're excited. My father went through his first rounds of chemo and all of the other nasty little things he went through, and we were told, oh, it should be fine. You should be in remission. We're gonna, keep doing these checks. COVID-19 happens. We're sitting there in the house. We're all trapped there, twiddling our thumbs, going, what in the Sam hell am I doing at this point? What's going on? I think that was the first time I truly got some usage out of Netflix. I have yet to touch it again
Yeah.
since. but good lord, we had that fun. And Tiger King, oh, good lord, Tiger King, you remember that
Yeah.
craziness? Huh. Um, not to get distracted.
No, you're good. You're good.
Um, and then for him to go back and get checked by the doc, and they said, "We're sorry, this is multiple myeloma, which is a blood bone cancer. It's the
Mm.
same thing as singular myeloma, where it attacks the bone structures, but it uses white blood cells to transition all across your body.
Oh
So
wow.
it uses your blood to transport it around your body." Um, there was no cure for that one. Um, and the worst part about it, and I'll get on my little soapbox for a second here.
No, go ahead.
Anyone who watches this, if you are a GWAT veteran, doesn't matter how old, how young, get your daggum cancer tests. GWAT vets have an ungodly proportionate amount of friggin' rare cancers that are popping out of nowhere from all the crazy, nasty stuff that we've been dealing with the last 30 years. Get checked. Because if my father had gotten checked probably about 2, 3 years before then, it might have stopped multiple myeloma from coming from singular myeloma.
Right.
And that's why it's so daggum important. Get checked for those nasty bugs because they can and will kill you. It doesn't matter how strong you are, it will kill you.
Mm.
And it is one thing that you can't fight by yourself. And you know, he fought hard. He did. He gave me 5 years. And he went through some of the most nasty experimental stuff of where they took healthy white blood vessels out of his body and basically made them they basically made him special forces, white blood cells to specifically target the cancers. They basically nuked his body into oblivion, and they did all this horrible, horrible stuff to his body that if he wasn't there in the hospital, you wouldn't have assumed he survived.
Man.
And he fought hard, but at the end it comes. And so I'm sitting there watching the man. We all love our friends a little differently. We all love our parents a little differently, but my father was my hero. And to sit there and watch him wilt away and fall apart was rough. All while all while sitting there and arguing with dadgum college administrators and sitting there trying to pay attention to these useless daggum classes. And I'm sitting there going, I could be doing so much better things with my life at this point. And just sitting there watching as my father, the stubborn mule he was still working full time at Indo-PACOM as a contractor, the same
Wow.
position that he worked for as a lieutenant colonel when we were there the last time in Hawaii. Literally, at one point, he was in the same office, working at the same desk with the same people, and like, "Oh, Colonel Sutton, you're back. How's things going?" He's like, "Well, I'm retired now, so what do you want?" Doing
Oh
his own little
man.
thing, and that's actually where I met some of my good friends and good mentors who, funny enough, moved here to Texas with me. So, wild, wild things, just
Yeah,
things going
man.
on there. And I know I got a little bit distracted there, but it's
No, you're
still
totally
hard to
good,
talk
brother.
about it, especially. And I know this is gonna sound weird. We're in my office, and I have my old man's ashes right here next to me, and it's always hard talking about him, even though it's been 5 years since he's passed, or almost 5 years since he's passed, and it still doesn't feel real to me.
Yeah, man. But
But
we want to. I definitely wanted to honor his legacy and honor him as not only as a veteran but as a father, as a man, as as a mentor and as a leader on this podcast as well. I mean, like it's his time mentoring, up and coming um cadets and applicants in, DEP programs for the Army, Marines, Navy, any branch. Like he was definitely a true leader and a true beacon of light, for us who were afraid of taking that jump into getting into the military. It wasn't it was him, it was Gunny, it was any of the other leaders out there at the ROTC program at Leon High School, and he really it will honestly be a disjustice to interview you and not talk about the greatness and the smiles and the laughs and the fun that he brought to the ROTC program, man. So, definitely just want to honor him in the best way, and just give him his flowers, man, here on Surviving the Flame. And as we talk about overcoming and getting through things. You mentioned this quote to me, "This too I shall endure." When we were having our consultation, pre-interview before the podcast and everything. That is a heavy quote. You know what I'm saying? What is the difference between simply surviving hard times and truly enduring, with your character intact?
Survivor's guilt is a real thing, right?
Mm,
And being able to survive experiences that you may not be 100% affected by, but being there with it and being able to survive that experience and grow from it is, I think, the most important lesson that anyone can take out of anything. As you said, perspective is everything.
yep.
Being able to understand what happened sucked. Being a part of it was not fun, and it's not a fond memory. But being able to take that and learn from it and being able to grow from it. And I've done it with every time I have stumbled, every time I have failed, even every time that I've succeeded, right? What's the first thing they tell you to do after an event? After action report. What went right? What went wrong? How can we
Yep.
improve? I take that mentality and I move forwards with it. This too I shall endure. I don't know if I'm stealing that from someone, but it's stuck into my head. It was my mantra to myself. It was a way for me to ground myself and understand I have been through life-threatening events. I have been through traumatic events before. I have suffered, as we all suffer. That is life. I will get through this. This too I shall endure. I will endure what happens to me. I will endure the cost of whatever's gone wrong, whatever's gone right, whatever's gone in between. I will endure it. I will grow from it, and I will learn from it. Hopefully, never to repeat it again. Hopefully, to maybe avoid it in future. That's what it means.
For sure, man. For sure. And speaking of that consultation, pre-interview that we had, you mentioned that, you don't compare yourself to others. In words in a world of social media and keeping up with how do you like and keeping up really, how do you stay critical of your own progress without falling into the trap of feeling like you're behind or feeling like, oh, this person is doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I should be doing blah, 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 blah. Like, how do you stay grounded within yourself and comfortable within yourself without, comparing yourself to what somebody else may be doing in their life?
I think I'll tell you something similar to what I said in the initial consultation. It's one of those of self improvement and self analysis is probably the best thing you could do. Now, you can't always be critical about yourself. You got to give yourself the flowers that you are due.
Absolutely.
However, saying something of like, "Oh, I should have been able to smoke that brisket, an hour earlier if I'd done X, Y, and Z," and learn from that. That is you telling you, "Hey, we need to adjust." Saying, "Oh, I should be able to run a sub 18 mile, 3 mile right now." That is true. You should be. But how are you going to improve on that? Or what didn't you do correctly? Did you stay up all night? Did you drink? Did you smoke? Did you do all this other dumb stuff? That's part of it.
Yeah.
Learn from that part. Avoiding social media, avoiding judging yourself to others. as I said, it was, we are all different creatures. We have all different paths in life. I cannot judge myself to you because we have not had the same experiences. We
Right.
have not set the same thing forward of what we want to do or what didn't go right. I can't sit here and envy you for the way your life has gone because most times we don't know all of what's happened to you or all of what's gone on in your life. I can't sit here and say, dang, you've had a really easy life. I wish I was like you because I don't know your stories. I don't know
Yeah.
I know some of them. You and I have
Mhm.
talked about that.
For
Others
sure.
have talked about that. But you can't sit there and look at what you find on, this daggone nightmare brick of where you're looking at someone showing you only their best side. They're
Yeah.
not showing you the hardship. They're not showing you the mundanity. They're not showing you the day to day. You can't judge yourself to how others are presenting themselves. All you can judge is yourself and
Yeah.
figure out what you want to be, what you don't want to be, what you want to learn. You can compare yourself to others and say, I'd like to be more like Tavion, right? I want to be more humble. I want to be more artistic. I want to be more handsome, right?
Yeah.
But I can't sit here and say, I wish I had your life because I
Mm.
don't. Because if I didn't have my life, I wouldn't have the experiences and I wouldn't be who I am today without what's
There you
happened
go.
to me.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. That's amazing. That's such a great way, to put that. And I feel like so many people can gravitate and learn from that because like you said, man, we live in such a time now where everything is comparison, comparison, comparison.
Mhm.
Everything is, oh, well, I wish, I was like this person. I wish I had the amount of money that this person had, or, I wish I had this. And it's just like, bro, like there is no better life than the one that you're living. Cause
Right.
it's so rare, bro. It's so rare to just be alive right now, to even be in this moment right now, man. Like you said, man, when you think about everything that you've endured, when you think of everything that all the traumas you had to overcome, whether it be the things that you went through with your parents, whether it would be the things that you went through within yourself, the relationships that were up, the relationships that were down, the moments that took you high, the moments that brought you low, like when you think about all of that, it's just like, man, like how? You know what I'm saying? It's very rare that we get to a moment where that we are just here right now, man. And so I want to I want to also transition now into a part of the podcast that we called questions from the fire pit. All right. So this is where we're going to have quick rapid fire questions back to back to back to back. You just answer them as fast as you can. They're going to be questions in relation to just who you are. You know what I'm saying? Quick, funny, witty, some spicy, some fun, some soft, some whatever. You know what I'm saying? You just answer them the best you can as fast as you can. Any questions before we go in? We get started. Good. All right, man. So we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna get started here with question number 1. All right. So, would you rather deep sea fishing or hunting in the deep woods?
Why you gotta get my two favorite things and make it impossible to choose both? Brother, come on.
Hey, man. Hey, man. Don't shoot
All
the
right.
messenger.
All right. My soul says the woods because while I love being out in the water and deep sea fishing, I don't actually eat fish. And our the family's rule that I've always grown up with is if you kill it, you have to eat it. So anytime I've caught a fish and
Uh,
we kill it, I eat it. I hate it. I don't
oh
like fish.
no.
Luckily,
Got it.
my soon-to-be wife loves fish, so in future, I just pawn it off on her. So
I
I will
got
have
you.
to say going hunting in the woods just solely for the fact of, nature is beautiful. I love to relax and stay out of trouble.
For sure, man. For sure. All right. So if you had to summarize your life's philosophy if you had to summarize your life's philosophy in a bumper sticker, what does it say?
Do good by others and improve the world one step at a time.
I love that. I love that. All right, so what's the one song that perfectly describes your get back up attitude?
Get back up attitude. Mm. You know, I grew up with classical heavy metal. I switched over
Yeah,
to modern heavy metal, and while I was at FAMU, and this is a story that we'll sidetrack real quick.
yeah, for sure.
I never listened to rap music before I got the FAM. And
For
so they
real.
introduced me to FAMU, and so I started listening to like grungier heavy metal. Like, unfortunately, I also started listening to XXXTentacion and like, Ski Mask, the Slump God, so just dumb
For
stuff,
sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I picked up this band called City Morgue, which is
Okay.
basically if you took New York style like rap and you mixed it with heavy metal, like toss it together, and some reason
Yeah.
it works. And so it's one of those of like, they have so many good songs of when I'm knocked down on my butt and I just need a second to be like, all right, I need to hype myself up and get up there and go, beat something or do something. Like, I'll just pop on some of that playlist and just I literally have it labeled under pumped music, and I'll just pop that up there and I'll be like, let's go.
Yeah, for sure, man. And shout out to FAMU, man. Shout out to FAMU. We've talked a lot about them, man, and it's one of the highlight, colleges here in Tallahassee, Florida. So definitely shout out to FAMU. But okay, got you, man. Next question, man. What is the most important lesson you learned from working or from chasing your dreams?
Don't be afraid to fail.
That's so
Even
important.
if you shoot for the moon and you miss, you're bound to hit a star eventually, right? Even if you don't hit that initial goal, you'll still find something around it or somewhere else where you can pivot to and adjust, right? That's probably the easiest thing that I've learned. Get back up, shoot for what you want, see what you're gonna do, keep going.
Got you. Our next question here is, you talked about your wife, man, and or your fiance. I'm so sorry, but soon to be wife. And you talk about like the distance that you guys have between you all. But you met your fiance on Discord. What's the secret to building the foundational rock, if you will, when you're thousands of miles apart?
The easiest way to put it is put in the daggum work. Okay? If you love this person, talk to them, work with them, tell them your experiences, try to go see each other. You might not always have the money. Like, I'll tell you, plane tickets to Canada before all this craziness this last year, like for a cheap ticket, it was about $300, $400. Once a month to go up see her, it is pricey. But it's worth it. Developing that relationship, developing that mindset, developing the fact of, if it's someone who you love, you will put in the effort, you will put in the work, and you will make it work. And that's not to say that we have a perfect relationship. We have problems, we argue, but at the end of the day, I can't imagine my life with anyone else, and I wouldn't ever know what to do with myself if I got single again.
I love that, man. I love that. And especially in a time today where, everybody wants to experience love and everybody wants to see exactly like what that looks like and what that feels like. Another question we have here is, what is one thing you want the Sutton name to stand for 100 years from now?
Reliability. I have always prided myself in, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I will do it. If I'm going to be there for you, I will be there for you. If you ask me to be there and I say yes, I'm going to be there. Sometimes that means I'm 30 minutes early. Sometimes that means I'm right on time. And unfortunately, sometimes that means traffic caught me and I'm an hour late. But I am always reliable. And if you need me, you can rely on me.
Awesome. I love that. If someone is listening right now who feels burned, by a friend, a loved one, whatever the case may be, what's the first step to becoming awesome again?
Understanding why it happened and why you're angry. A lot of the time when someone burns you, and as I told you,
Yeah.
I have been burned. People have hurt me. People have used me. It's gonna hurt. Let yourself feel those emotions. Let yourself feel that pain. But at the end of the day, sit there and go, okay, why did they do this? Why do I feel this way? What was I looking for that they weren't looking for that caused this disconnect or this problem?
Yeah.
Was I looking for love and they're looking for one night? Was it, I was looking for someone that I could be friends with forever and they were just looking for someone that they could use for money? Like, what's going on there? Figure that out and understand not everyone's out to get you still. Just because one
Mm.
person was bad doesn't mean that the world's bad.
I love that. I love that. Um, what is one thing that will never burn out in Scott Sutton?
My curiosity. I am
Mm.
always curious about things, wanting to learn and wanting to explore and understand. Sometimes it's little things of, where I'm currently working on doing sales and marketing, how I could find new methods to make my product look pretty. Sometimes it's other companies. Sometimes it's new products that I've never found. Sometimes it's pieces of history. Sometimes it's movies. I'm always curious about things that I either A, don't know, or B, don't know as well as I should. And I love being able to figure it out or understand it to the point of where I can either teach it to someone or teach it to myself again.
Got you, got you. And last question here is, like when you think about, the love of your life, your fiance, you know what I'm saying? If for when she does listen and she hears your story and just how amazing, how much of an amazing person you are, just like as a culmination, you know what I'm saying? What is one, if you had one sentence to let the world know how you feel about her, what would that one sentence be?
I'd do just about anything for you but live in the cold, pretty much.
Oh man.
Right?
Oh
Like,
man. Um, transitioning out of the questions from the fire pit, and focusing now on just how focusing now more on the futuristic side of you and where you see yourself in the future and everything like that. That's actually something I do want to talk about, is talk about your relationship right now with your fiance. Tell me, like, when was the moment that you knew that this young lady was gonna be the one for you?
brother, the easiest way I can say that was after we got past the puppy love stage, and all I could ever think was of her, of our future together, getting married, having children, building a life together.
Mm.
The fact that and she's gonna mess with me about this. The fact that I couldn't wait for the day that I'd give her my last name and that we would talk about having children and we would build this life to each other. The whole reason I got this house that I'm currently in right now was because she said, if she's coming down to Texas, we need to have a house that we own. I bought her a
Love that.
daggum house because I love her, and I can't imagine my life without her, and the fact that we have rooms for, like, 2 or 3 little kids, and that's something that, I'm looking forward to it. Having
Yeah.
family, someone that I can share my love with and forever be hers and her ever always being mine, it's one of those of I think of that and every little struggle, every little pain, every little annoyance just goes away because that's what I want, and I can't imagine what else I would have without it.
That is amazing, brother. I love that. I love that, and just to see your devotion and your care towards that man is truly amazing. Especially like to find love, period, at all. You know what I'm saying? I was talking to another friend of mine. We were talking about the the rarity in finding what you're meant to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very rare that you find out that, like, oh, this is my calling, or this is, like, what it is. But it's also just as rare just to find out the person who you're meant to be with. You know what I'm saying? Like in a world where everybody just wants to get that just quick, you know what I'm saying? Like they don't really want to take the time to want to get to know that person or want to get to, experience that person or whatever the case may be. But like for you, I mean, like for you and your fiance, man, like you guys have spent time apart. I mean, like you're in Texas. She's all the way in Canada. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? Like, just not allowing space and not allowing distance to be a factor in how much you love her and how much love that she has for you. You know what I'm saying? And speaking of the love that you have for her, I want to harp on, like the love and that you have just for people in general. You've said that you want to help others grow into their potential. If there's one person listening who feels like they failed too many times or, there's no way they can try again, what is a direct message that you have for them?
Hmm. Hey, knucklehead. Everyone fails. Get off your butt. Try again. If you don't like it, find something else to do. Because at this point, you can't quit. Keep moving.
There you go, man. There you go. That is, ladies and gentlemen, man. This is Scott freaking Sutton, man. This is my brother from another mother, man. And I'm so happy and I'm so glad that we've been able to, get together and just have this conversation, man. Thank you just for being a brother and for showing us that peace isn't absence of chaos, but it's how you move through it. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that has just been your life in total. And I feel like this is just the beginning, man. Like the way and how you've been able to maneuver and move through and overcome, there is no way you're anywhere near done. You know what I'm saying? Like you're anywhere near like the the finish line. You know what I'm saying? Like this is, if anything, you just pass a checkpoint. Once you get married, there's going to be another checkpoint. Once you actually get into those big rooms that you want to be in, there's going to be another checkpoint. Once you get to, being able to inspire and talk to those young leaders and young service members and everything like that, there's going to be another checkpoint. Like you are such a talent and such a light and such an amazing presence just to be around, man. I just want to thank you just for allowing me to have your time and you come on the podcast and share love and peace and just, let people know like what it means to truly survive the flame. You know what I'm saying? So thank you so much, brother, for coming on, and before we go in and we head out of here, is there any last words that you want to share with the people, as we go in and we get through with this?
Yeah. Life is not a straight line. Okay, this is a dadgum roller coaster. You're gonna go up, you're gonna go down. It might break down. You might have to get out and walk for a little bit. You might get on a horse somehow and fly off a roof. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
Never stop improving. Never stop moving forward. And most importantly, never stop believing in yourself. Even if everyone else doesn't believe in you, and even if everyone else is talking down on you, as long as you believe in yourself and you're in your own camp, world can't stop you. Keep pressing forward.
God, how do you beat that? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you hate Scott? You know what I mean? But man, again, brother, thank you so much, man. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Surviving the Flame. This is where we have these deep conversations about brotherhood, about sisterhood, about, just about overcoming, about the laughs, the ups, the downs. This is where we come together and we shed light and we be a light for those still going through those hard times and those hard moments. So honestly, Scott, again, thank you. I can't say it enough, man. Thank you so much. Big shout out to FAMU. Big shout out to your family, your fiance, and everybody that's helped make you who you are today, man. That's incredible and it's amazing, man. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to find this episode, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere where you get your podcasts. And most importantly, check out mickensnation.com, where you can also find this episode along with many others and clips from some of your favorite episodes that you've seen thus far and some that you may have not seen just yet. You know what I'm saying? And so next time, always spread kindness, spread peace, spread love, and always find your way to grind. This is Surviving the Flame. Thank you very much. What you just heard wasn't a story. It wasn't just a timeline of events or a list of hardships. It was a reminder that strength isn't loud, it's steady. It's choosing to stand back up when life knocks you down. It's choosing kindness when bitterness would be so much easier. It's choosing to keep your heart open even after it's been bruised. Today, Scott showed us what it looks like to endure without becoming hardened, to bend without breaking, to walk through the fire and still come out with a smile that isn't fake, but earned. From dreams deferred to dreams rebuilt, from breaking to healing, from carrying the weight of family to learning how to carry and care for himself. Scott reminded us that surviving the flame isn't about avoiding the heat. It's about learning who you are when you're inside it. And if there's one thing I want you to take from this episode, from this conversation, is this. You don't have to move fast. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep moving. Because Scott said it, this too I shall endure. So if you're listening to this right now and you're in your own fire, breathe. Step forward, 1 inch, 1 step at a time. Because you are not done yet, and it's not over until you win. So Scott, thank you so much for your honesty, your humility, your heart. Thank you for reminding us that resilience isn't a moment, it's a lifestyle. I'm your host, Tavion Mickens, and this has been Surviving the Flame. If today's episode has moved you, inspired you, or gave you something to think about, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone that you feel may really need it. And until next time, keep rising, keep rebuilding, keep grinding, keep surviving the flame. Thank you.